Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second AYO applications webinar. My name is Eliza, and I'm the Artistic Administrator here at AYO. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Today's webinar is a chance to hear all about the AYO auditions process and get some expert advice on preparing yourself and putting your best foot forward in your upcoming AYO audition. So I am joined this evening by three very experienced musicians and auditions panelists, Michele Walsh, Ben Ople, and Tim White.
Hello.
In past years, Michele, Ben, and Tim have all made regular appearances on AYO auditions and are extremely experienced in the assessment. So thank you to those of you who sent us your questions ahead of tonight. If you think of something during the webinar that you'd like to ask the panel, you can pop it into the Q&A function and we will try and ask those as we go or save some time at the end. So before we launch into our questions, I thought we could begin by briefly just getting to know each of our panelists a little bit and hear about who they are and what their connection with AYO is. So maybe let's hear from Michele first, and then Ben, and then we'll Tim. Michele.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm really disappointed I can't see you. So I'm just visualizing you all there and your eagerness for this process for preparing for the auditions for AYO programs. Just a little background to myself. I'm based in Brisbane. I'm the head of the string department at the Queensland Conservatorium. And I'm actually, I could say that I'm a bit of an AYO junkie. I first went to my first music camp when I was 14. And I think I probably went to music camp as long as I could until they threw me out because I was too old. And I also started playing in AYO when I was 15. So I went right through many AYOs. Since then, I have kept returning as a tutor for music camps and for AYOs and pretty well every program that AYO has offered. And I also have been on the board of AYO in past years, and I'm now on the artistic committee. So I hear about all the exciting plans and help occasionally contribute to that. So most recently, I've been on the panel for the string panel because I'm a violinist, and I have been. I've done the audition tour many, many times. So that's when we've actually, for those of you who haven't done one of these auditions before, we actually normally would be traveling all around the country and meeting you in person. And of course, unfortunately, we can't do that this time. So it's up to the panel, this new panel this year, to be doing that. But it's a real privilege to be on the panel. And I'm going to stress that your panel is always going to be looking forward to the auditions. So anyway, I'll pass on over to the others.
Thanks, Michele. So my name's Ben Ople. I'm an oboist, and so I've been tutoring various different AYO programs for a few years now, and it's so great. It's something that I really love doing, getting to know you all, and I'm sure some of you have probably come across me before in some way, shape or form, and I'm certainly looking forward to meeting you all at some stage. So as I said, I'm an oboist. I've played in a whole bunch of orchestras all around the country and all around the world, in fact, and these days I'm doing a lot more chamber music and doing things like commissioning new pieces of music and exploring what we can do with that as a solo oboe player and also in chamber music. But I love orchestra a lot, and I actually really love diving into excerpts and thinking about how they work when we're working on them privately to be presented as part of an audition. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks, Ben. My name's Tim White. I play the triangle and the drums and all the things that you hit. That's my joy. I'm the head of classical music at the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and AYO and National Music Camp changed my life. I went as a kid, late high school. I was from Canberra. I didn't know any other percussionists. Went down to Geelong Grammar, had the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of my whole life at that stage. Equally terrifying and exhilarating. But I came home from that music camp knowing that this was what I wanted to do. And I stayed, like Michele, in every camp until I got too old. And I've been back to about 6 as a tutor. So I think I'm up to 11, although Michele, you're probably far past that. And my joy is creating beauty on the stage and connecting with audiences and helping students to create careers, to build careers for students. And that joy that I felt at that first music camp, I'm still feeling it now. So it's great to be part of the AYO experience.
Great, thank you all. It's really great to have you all here. So we received some really good questions over the past week. Some were quite specific and others a bit broader. So I wanted to begin with some more general questions to kind of build a picture of the overall, I guess, auditions format. And then we'll move on to talk about preparing oneself for the different aspects of the audition. So the own choice piece and then the excerpt. So jumping right in, what makes a strong AYO audition? What are some of the qualities that the panel recognise in a strong audition?
Fantastic question. Now, as a percussionist, I'm very focused on excerpts, orchestral excerpts. So I would think there's a bunch of tangible things that make a strong audition and some harder to describe intangible ones. The tangible ones, are you playing the excerpt or the piece at an appropriate tempo, the kind of tempo that it's usually done at? Is the rhythm right? Are the notes right? Are the dynamics followed? Is the sound quality beautiful? Is the articulation working? Is there a sense of consistency all the way through it? How's the intonation? How's the phrasing? And they're all things that you can kind of measure. I'll call them tangibles. And then the intangibles, which really make an audition absolutely stand out. Does a person play with conviction and authority? Well, how on earth do you measure that? But it certainly stands out in an audition. Does it have a sense of rhythmic security? Is there a sense of style and character and flair? Because the last thing you want to do is just play boring without style and character. Somehow does the player create a mood or an atmosphere and bring the music to life? And there's not one way of bringing it to life, but your job is to bring it to life. And then what I think of as the holy grail of excerpts is when the panel listens to it, can they somehow hear the rest of the orchestra playing? If you can make the panel imagine the rest of the orchestra playing with you, then you've absolutely nailed it. So that's what I think makes a strong audition.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think one thing to remember is that we want to hear you at your best. I think that's really important. We're not sitting there kind of waiting to hear mistakes. Absolutely not. We want to hear your personality in your playing. And I find that a really strong audition is when someone presents themselves in that way as well. And just, it's basically what Tim said as well, a general level of preparedness. There's just certain things that you can do that for us, we can tell when someone really understands and knows an excerpt or even their own piece intimately. And it's just that level of preparedness, making sure that you've listened to things well enough and that you have chosen the right piece to be as prepared as you possibly can be. And I think that even includes, I'm just thinking for wind instruments, but I'm sure it's the same across the board, just making sure that your instrument is at its best as well, because sometimes you just want to be ready to have the best reed that you can on the day if you're an oboe, bassoon or clarinet. And even just making sure sometimes our instruments can go out of adjustment, and that's bad, but you just want to try to be putting your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree with all of those points. And for the string players, I'd say for me it's about style and context. You have to think about where these excerpts have come from. I also think it's quite helpful for you to think about why do you think this excerpt's been chosen? And that's a really important thing, because you're sort of getting in the mind of the person or the adjudicators why they set that. And it's usually to demonstrate certain things. So there'll be, certainly in the case of string players, it's all the little sort of looking at the excerpts this year, the stylist, different style as in terms of the period of music, showing as a string player that you really understand the bow strokes and the articulations which Tim was talking about. That's really, really important. And certainly, if you are rhythmic, that it's a rather interesting thing, not just to be rhythmic like a metronome, but a breathing rhythm. And so often people who play have practiced with the metronome, which you all should do, by the way, but only practice with the metronome. Sometimes they forget to breathe because a metronome cannot breathe. And that's a really important thing. So use the metronome, but then remember it's music making. So those are the things I would be saying too.
Yeah.
Great answers. So this year, the AYO auditions will be moving online, and we will be requiring applicants to submit a recording. So do any of you have any advice on kind of replicating a real life audition scenario in front of a camera? And how do you stop yourself from doing things like obsessing over the video recording and doing, take after take?
I'll just jump in now. A couple of things I was thinking about with regard to the recording is I would practice early. I would, even when you're not ready with your excerpts, I'd just actually start recording. Because recording something, if you've done it before, you realize that it's a different result from when you play live. So your dynamics will have to be probably very exaggerated. Sometimes recordings tend to flatten them out. So you'll need to know if it actually, when you play so loud that you're distorting the sound. So that's a good thing, and how far away from the microphone and what room you feel comfortable to play in and has the best sound for the recording. You don't want it to be too live, because then you'll get too much reverb. They're things. So the best way to do it is just practice doing it. And then you'll get used to it, so you won't be so worried and concerned when you actually finally make your decision to record. So I'd say that's a really important thing for me. To stop yourself obsessing, that's a hard one, because, I mean, everything can always be better. But I think you're putting either 4 excerpts down or 6 excerpts down. You just have to decide that if you were just doing it live, it would be one go. And I think it's a really important thing. If you've practiced and if you've played for your friends and your teachers, you might even like to simulate an audience. You could have two auditioners in the room with you. I mean, they might be your teddy bears. I don't know. or you could have, I wouldn't get the pets in. They might make a bit of noise. But, you know, it might make you feel better if you feel like you're playing to somebody. So those are all things you could practice and think about beforehand.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. So next question is, how do you ensure that the audition process is fair, and how do you ensure all applicants are considered equally? So I might answer that one. The audition process at AYO is designed to ensure that everyone has a chance to present their best performance and be assessed equally alongside others. So one of AYO's key priorities is access, and that means anyone eligible to audition. So to keep the process as fair as possible, we aim to kind of ensure consistency across all of the auditions and control as many variables as we possibly can. So this starts with everyone having exactly the same material to prepare. So for example, all flutes prepare the same excerpts and all violins will prepare the same excerpts. And then every audition is viewed by 2 panellists. So in the case where a panellist student is auditioning, then the other panellists will review that particular audition. So no applicant will ever be assessed by their teacher. And then all of our panellists are experienced professional musicians and also very experienced when it comes to assessing auditions. So this year we actually have a specialist for every single instrument. So you can have faith that your audition is being assessed by people who are pre-qualified. And then I guess the last thing to say on that is that if you have auditioned previously for AYO auditions, AYO programs, then these results have no impact on your subsequent auditions. So previous results are not acceptable and are not taken into account by panelists at all. So if this is the first year that you have auditioned, then you have just as much chance of getting in as anyone else does. I might move us along now. So if you are auditioning for our programs, then you're asked to prepare a set of excerpts and also a piece of your own choice up to 5 minutes. So the additional own choice piece applies to all applicants except for percussionists and pianists. So Michelle, I might direct this one at you. What is more important, the excerpt or the own choice piece?
That's actually a very tricky question, because you're hearing the whole person. They have a different value. So when somebody chooses an own choice piece, we would hope you choose that piece because you enjoy playing it and you think it shows you to your best advantage. So for a panel, that's a snapshot into you as a player, how you play. Now, with regard to the orchestral excerpts, of course, they're incredibly important because that's what you're auditioning to play. You're auditioning to play in an ensemble program. So I think that probably my own personal opinion is that the orchestral excerpts are more important. But having said that, we do want that own choice piece to say, it's like your calling card. Here I am, this is how I play. And then go on with the excerpts afterwards. So I don't know, Ben, if you feel similarly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think also though, with your own choice piece, exactly like you said, Michelle, it is the chance for us to see who you are. It's also the chance for you to pick a piece that best displays the way that you play and best displays your best attributes on your instrument. And so I like to to take a lot of time when I'm thinking about this for myself as well, when I'm thinking about a piece that I want to play, even in a concert. And I have to ask myself, does this display the best of my musicality as well as the best of my dynamic range and articulation and phrasing? And does it best display the music style that of the genre of the piece that I'm about to play? And then on top of that, does it display a good amount of technical facility? And I think the thing with the own choice piece, some people think that the best thing to do is pick the absolute hardest piece in the repertoire, but then maybe it actually doesn't demonstrate what you can do best. And conversely, we don't want to pick the easiest piece that's around that doesn't display everything that you can do. So it takes a little bit of time and you know, maybe some talking with your teacher, but also for you to sit down and maybe assess for yourself how what your attributes are for your playing.
Can I add one more thing to that? I would not choose an own choice piece that you haven't played to anybody before.
Absolutely.
You will all found that the more you perform something, the more you grow with it and you understand it. So my advice would be try to play something that you feel that you can play and you've played for other people many times and you're happy playing.
Right. More specific question on that. Is it okay to play the same piece that I played last year for my audition?
Yep, I don't see a problem with that at all. Again, I think if it's just fitting in with what I was saying before around those guidelines, but also it can be an evolution. Sometimes auditions are an opportunity as well for you to grow as a player. And so it could be an opportunity for you to think, yeah, I could just play the piece I played last year, but maybe there's something that's developed in my own playing since last year that I want to explore in the context of preparing this audition.
Oh, sorry, Michelle?
I would totally agree with that.
So a question that's just come through tonight, is there any disadvantage for the applicant in playing just a segment of a longer work for their solo piece, like rather than whole?
Not necessarily from my point of view. As close as you can get to that 5-minute limit, though, means that we can more easily assess against various different players. And sometimes it might just mean that little bit of extra playing might have something in there that we weren't able to hear otherwise.
Yes.
All right, I might move on now to talk a little bit about the excerpts. So Tim, I might bring you back into the conversation here. So from the perspective of someone who has been through auditions themselves and also sat on panels, can you maybe offer some advice on how to approach learning a new excerpt? So maybe like talk us through what your process is from receiving a new set of excerpts through to the debut audition.
Well, first of all, be excited about it. If an excerpt or a pack of excerpts is unfamiliar to you, you are about to have the joy of learning some fantastic pieces of music and get your head around some tricky technical challenges. So approach it as a task of joy. And I think the first step is to listen a lot. Listen to 5, 10, 15 versions of the piece from better known orchestras, so you know how does it go. Get a metronome on it, figure out what a typical tempo of it is. Have a look at it and think, why has the panel chosen this? Is it to check out your soft playing of a particular style? Is it a Baroque piece of music? What are they trying to check out? Figure out what you think the hard bits are and then get lots of advice and be methodical about practicing it. So certainly don't try playing it through and through and through. Try to figure out what is difficult, what are the tricky things, pull them apart, work on them, reassemble it, put it back together and start playing it to people.
Okay, so next question. In the AYO excerpts pack, we have a set A and we have a set B. So perhaps Michelle, what's the difference between the excerpts in set A and set B? And how should an applicant decide which one they should play?
Okay, so the younger players will be doing only the set up 1 to 4, but the people who are applying for AYO or some of the other fellowship programs that would need to do the 6 excerpts. And it's a good idea. Generally speaking, the numbers 5 and 6 are actually more difficult. And they're presenting, maybe not, you might not think they're technically more difficult, but they will have more interesting, more demands musically, a real understanding of a type of sound or style. So that's generally the case. So the first 4 will always display certain things. So if you look through them, you'll say, I can see why I'm doing that. I can play that. They're all designed as pieces that you would come across quite normally. They're not odd pieces. So how you decide to do, I mean, some people think, I'm just going to go for everything. I'm so excited, I'm just going to apply for everything and see what happens. And that's a tremendously good thing to do. But sometimes don't be worried if so you've been working on those 6 excerpts and then suddenly you get close to the audition, you think, well, look, actually, numbers 5 and 6 aren't as good as I'd like them to be. It doesn't matter. You can then tell AYO, look, I thought I'd apply for the AYO to be in AYO and do the 6 excerpts, but perhaps I think I'll wait till next year and just do a really fine job with those 4 excerpts. So that's the sort of difference, I think. You could think about that. And it's always good to be building, and you're going to use these excerpts again anyway. So it's good to have practiced things.
Great. So where do you start when you're not sure which recordings to listen to?
Well, quality orchestras, quality conductors. So not the Venezuelan Symphony Orchestra, but go for quality orchestras and conductors, and then put a metronome on the various recordings so that you can find out what is a typical tempo for a quality orchestra.
And also just the more the merrier as well, I think. I mean, obviously, absolutely look for those quality recordings. The more that you can listen to, the more that you'll start to form your own opinions around what works and what doesn't work. And perhaps you'll find that standard interpretation and standard tempo. There might be 20 that are all a little bit similar. And then there's one that's extraordinarily fast that might be, exciting to listen to, but perhaps not quite appropriate for an audition at this stage.
From the point of view of string players, where you play things and what part of the bow is really, really important. So if you're watching a recording or a video of a top orchestra, it's going to tell you what are all the traditional places to play in the bow. It's going to give you ideas of what bowings to choose. And if you are very observant, you can help with choice of fingerings and what colour, what string to play on, so the colour of sound. So we're very lucky. If we're watching really good recordings, not only listening, we can actually see things that will help to prepare for the auditions.
Great. Next question. What if I can't play one of my excerpts as fast as the tempo guideline? Is it okay to play it slower?
I think it's a bit of a balancing act from my side for the wins. Of course, we want to hear accuracy, but then, of course, there is, I guess, a limit with that as well. So as much as possible, we want to hear things at the tempo that they're meant to be played at, with as much accuracy as possible. And then, I guess, finding the balance that works best for you to be able to express yourself musically. And I think if you're on perhaps the slower side of an interpretation, but we can hear that there's a really strong conviction musically and stylistically, then that there's no problem with that from my side.
From the string playing perspective, because you are in the orchestra one of many playing, and sometimes there are some really fast tempi that probably make it much more exposed, because normally it's not one person just playing it. So I would say, if you really feel that it's too fast and you just can't, I would say just take the tempo down a notch or two. It does make a difference, and especially because it's not like the wind and other instruments. You have many people playing, and sometimes some of those passages are almost for effect. Some of them, not all of them. And in fact, I'm thinking about the excerpts this year that I've seen. You'll find when you listen to recordings that you'll get different tempos anyway, and there are suggested metronome markings on the excerpts. But when you've listened to lots of recordings, you'll see that actually there are lots of different interpretations too. So I wouldn't play something really horrifically fast just because it says to, and you know that you can't play it that fast. That doesn't really help you at all.
Agreed.
Okay. Do I need to separate each excerpt or record them in one take? So basically you have to record them all in one take. So we want to try and replicate the real life audition scenario as much as possible. And in a real audition, you wouldn't be able to play one excerpt again and again until you got it where you wanted it to. So yeah, all in one take.
Just to clarify as well, that's the piece as well. So you play the piece and then the excerpts all in one take.
No, so the piece will
They're
be
separate.
in a different
Okay,
tape. Yeah,
great.
piece on its own, and then all of the excerpts together in one tape. And they can
Great.
be done on different days, but they have to be.
Yeah. Right. Just to follow up to that, it's
Yeah.
worth practicing, therefore, playing all of the excerpts in one go, starting a week, 10 days before you actually record, so that you get the feeling for the stamina and the feeling for dealing with what happens through a sequence of excerpts, and you can play each one cold.
One little thing to add, when you're playing 6 different pieces and styles, make sure that you do allow time for yourself to change from one style to another. Sometimes I think, one feels a little bit awkward, so one goes as quickly as possible from one thing to another. But I always say to my students, imagine you have to change your clothes to go to wear clothes that are fitting for that period. So you're actually having a costume change that becomes the musical change too. And just that sort of concept can help you go from one style and context to another.
What a great idea.
All right, so we will just spend maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes now just answering some of the questions that we received from our participants tonight. So first question, why don't you give feedback? So basically, the auditions are a massive process. Most years we have more than 1,000 auditions, so unfortunately it's just not practical for us to be able to provide individual feedback to every applicant. Do you recommend learning the own choice piece from memory?
I'll jump in. Look, if you normally play from memory, play from memory. If you normally don't play from memory, don't. It's not important. You're not being judged on that. You need to play as well as you can play. So do what you normally do.
What happens if you're not at the required AME grade? Can you still audition? So yes, the grades are given as a guideline, and you don't necessarily have to be playing at that grade, but I would be discussing that sort of thing with my teacher. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Or?
No.
It just comes back to what I was saying sort of near the beginning about just making sure that you're putting your best foot forward and the realistic version of your playing, because that's what we'll be listening to.
Yeah. So Ben, this is probably a good one for you. Could you explain what it means to audition on an auxiliary wind instrument, and maybe what are the benefits of auditioning on one in addition to your primary instrument? Sure.
I think this has come up a fair bit about whether it puts you, it gives you a foot in the door if you're auditioning on an auxiliary instrument. For those of you who don't know, that's the cor anglais for the oboes or the piccolo or the bass clarinet. Or contrabassoon. So there are all these extra instruments that you can audition on. It doesn't necessarily give you any extra benefit for the actual audition. It is it's an opportunity to explore those auxiliary instruments. You never know. It could be the time that when you decide to start working on this, that's your favorite instrument and it's actually your calling. I know that's happened for a lot of people. But I think that, the big thing is to say, again, we can tell from our side if someone has maybe ticked that box and borrowed an instrument from someone and put it together at the last minute. And in that case, it certainly doesn't do you any favours. So I think, again, just make sure that if you're doing it for the right reasons, which is to be able to prepare the best that you can on that specific instrument, to be able to put your best foot forward.
Great. So this is another one on the own choice piece. Is it bad to choose a piece that is really common, that lots of other people might be playing?
I might just jump in quickly and say no. Again, sometimes sometimes these pieces are played often for a reason, because they do display a lot of the different things that we can do on our instrument, and so I don't think that should ever be a reason not to do it. But it's also not a reason to do it either. Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you should. I know that there are some standards for the different instruments, but again, I have to keep on coming back to this for the own choice piece. Just make sure that it is that piece is displaying the best of your playing.
All right. Do you have a complaints procedure? Yes, we do have a complaints procedure. You are welcome to raise any issues with us by email with the CEO, Colin Cornish. I think on that note, as it's 7 p.m, we might bring the webinar to a close, unless anyone has any kind of final
I do.
Yeah.
This is an issue, no one's raised it yet, but I know 90% of people auditioning will have negative thoughts in their head. They'll be self-criticizing as they go. They make a mistake. They start obsessing over the mistake. How to deal with that? And my big suggestion there is to use what I call a fire extinguisher thought. If a negative thought comes into your head, oh, I stuffed up there, oh, I'm going to mess this next bit up, oh, my sound is terrible, squash it with a fire extinguisher thought. And my favorite one is, what comes next? When you think what comes next, it puts you totally back in the zone. What notes do I play next? What's the next phrase? Where am I going? Puts you back into a zone of positivity and away from this self-critical head that so many of us have to deal with.
Yeah, I might just add to that and say, I think I said it earlier as well. We can't wait to hear you play your best. That's what we're here for. We love listening to you play. So just remember that even in your preparation, regardless of on the day, but even in your practice, we can't wait.
Yeah, yes. And my favourite quote in all of music is from Beethoven: "To play a wrong note is insignificant, but to play without passion is inexcusable." And if you take that to heart, your music making will never be filled with fear, it'll be filled with joy.
Yes.
That's a really lovely sentiment to end on, Tim. Thank you. So to everyone, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. If you still have further questions about applying for AYO, or if your question didn't get answered tonight, then please do get in touch with us by email at info@ayo.com.au, or by giving us a call on 1300 668 500. And make sure you tune in as well on Wednesday, the 14th of October. We'll be presenting our third and final webinar on how to record your video audition, so all that techy stuff. And finally, just a massive thank you to our three amazing panelists, Michele, Ben and Tim, joining us this evening. It's been really, really insightful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Good luck, everyone. Have a great time as you prepare everything.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.